Hello, welcome to Stop Sign Parking Sign UV Mapping Part 2. What we're going to do today, right now, is go ahead and get the UV saved out. So go into Object Mode, make sure it's Object Mode, and we're going to go ahead and turn off the texture map there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to save this out. So basically go into go into the snapshot and click on that, and then we're going to tell it where to go. We want to have pixel size 4096 by 4096. Make sure aspect ratio is on, anti-aliasing is on, and make sure your format is Targa. That's essential. So Targa, go to browse, make sure you're putting it in the right area. So with me, I've got it set up to my exercise 4, and I want it to go into the source images folder. So in here, I'm going to basically just call it what it is. Stop parking UV map. There you go. So basically just name it what it is so you won't have any problems, and make sure you place it where you want it to be placed. So go ahead and save that. Okay, so basically apply and close. If you just apply, we won't close. If you just close, it won't save it. So apply and close. It's saving it to my hard drive. So if you're using a flash drive, it may take longer. Okay, it looks like it's got something on there. Override it. Yep. Okay, I'll edit that out, hopefully. I won't forget. Okay, so we've got the low poly all basically set up for texturing. So that's all set up for texturing. The thing we need to do now is we need to go in and do a to add the AO maps and the normal maps to this object. Okay, so the low poly has to be UV mapped, and the high poly, basically you're going to use that as a baking. So we're going to kind of fool the system and how this all works. So I'm going to basically close the UV editor, and the next thing we're going to do is take you through how to bake the maps onto the object, okay, and what they look like. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to leave them at 0, 0, so just basically going to be turning things off and on. So we're going to be doing the stop sign first. Okay, so I'm going to have to duplicate this, so Control D, put in a new layer, and this will be the parking sign, park sign post. Okay, we'll turn that off, and then this will be the stop sign post, this will be the stop sign. So what we're going to do is we need a high poly and a low poly. So we're going to fool the software into thinking that this object is going to be high poly because it's got the high poly bolts, but it's really not high poly. As we know, we didn't add edge loops and we didn't smooth it or anything like that, but we don't need to do that because that will cause all kinds of problems. So what we're going to do is we're going to select this object, and this is going to be our low poly. So what I'm going to do is I am going to combine it as one object, Okay. I'm going to go into edit, delete by type history. Okay, and then we're going to do Control D. So this will be my low poly. Okay, I'm going to make another one. Layer called high poly. Here's my high poly. Okay, that'll be my high poly right here. So I'm going to turn that off. So the low poly, so we're going to add its own layer. And let's call this stop low poly. Okay, that's stop low poly, so you can turn that off and on. And the high poly will have the bolts on it, so we'll turn off the low poly. This is the high poly. Let me rename that to stop high. Okay, so basically you'll have two layers. One with the high poly. Okay, that's with the bolts, so select everything in here. And let's right click over this and go to add selected objects so we can turn that off and on. Okay, right? Cool. Alright, so we'll do the same thing with the low poly. So we got that, and we got the parking sign. So we got the parking post and the parking sign. There we go. So now we're going to select those two, combine those together. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a duplicate. So this will be low poly and the other one will be high poly. So Control D. And then we're going to add another layer. We're going to call this Park High Poly. And save that. And just make that invisible. So turn visibility off. And then this one will be low poly, so we'll add that to a layer. Park low poly. There we go. We're just kind of managing our scenes here. So I can turn that off and on. So the high poly will have to have the bolts, like the other one. So the Park high poly does not have the bolts, so we're going to need to go into the stop sign high poly. Select those bolts, like this. Deselect everything else. And we will copy those. So Control D. And we will put that in the Park high poly. So let's add those to that selection. Okay. There we go. So the parking sign has this high poly, and the stop sign has its high poly. Okay, so let's turn everything off and see if everything's working. So stop sign high poly, yes. Park high poly, yes. Park low poly, yes. And stop low poly, yes. Alright, so they gotta occupy the same space. So if we were to look at the high poly and the low poly, they would occupy the exact same space. Okay? Alright, since they occupy the same space, it's nice to have them in layers because it would be really hard to pick them and you would get confused. So we need a high poly, that's that. The only thing that makes this parking sign a high poly are the bolts. Okay? Because we want to bake a normal map into that to make it look like it's high poly. And we'll discuss that a little bit more. I know you might be a little bit confused. So what we're going to do is everything looks good so far. Basically we want a low poly and a high poly for the parking sign, a low poly and a high poly for the stop sign. And put those in layers, rename them appropriately so you don't get lost. We need to make this one object. So let's go ahead and select it. Make sure your layer is selected and select the whole thing and combine it. So when you combine it, it throws it out of the layer. So you need to make sure you right click over the stop high poly layer and add those back in there. So now you've got your high poly and you got your low poly. And the Park high poly needs the same thing because we need to combine those together. So click on the combine. You can also hold down the space bar, go to mesh combine. Alright, so make sure you combine those, and again you got to put it back in the layer, so go ahead and add selected. Alright, so now we've got the high poly and the low poly. Okay, we're going to need to rename these properly, so with the high poly visible for the stop sign, we need to rename that stop high poly. And we'll rename all our objects. Turn that off. Okay, and this is going to be called stop low poly. Turn on the Park high poly. Make sure you select it. Okay, and then Park low poly. Okay, we don't want that. We want underscores. There we go. Park low poly. Okay, so just double check everything. So high poly, and we got it renamed. That is, this should be stop sign, stop high poly, stop low poly, Park high poly, Park low poly. Alright, so we need to save those all out. So now we're going to click on this. This is the high poly. That will not be UV mapped, meaning that it will probably be, some of it will be UV mapped because we UV mapped it before, but it won't be a problem. So we're going to go to File, Export Selection, OBJ Export. Everything is highlighted or selected. Export selection. Make sure you have it's going into your scenes folder, and we'll call this, which one is that? Is that the stop sign? Yep, stop high poly. So stop high poly. Okay, stop high poly, and then we're turn that off and stop low poly. Make sure that's selected. Export selection, and we'll just put low instead of high. There we go. Stop low poly. Okay. Turn that off, and we'll do click on the park sign, the high poly parking sign. Save that out, and that will be Park high poly. So just type in Park, reuse the other name, Park high poly, and turn that off and turn on the low poly, and we'll export that as low poly. We'll export that as low poly. So we'll just put Park in front of that. Alright, so now we have our 4 models. Okay. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is you need to download XNormal, and just type in XNormal, download it. It's free. Get the latest version, and it's easy to install. It doesn't take that much room, and it will work on everything that's PC. It will not work on a Mac, so you'll have to do this at school if you don't have a PC. Alright, so we're going to pause this, and we'll get